Here we go again. What are the 7 most critical router security settings? Listeners, I don't even know how to answer this question. We are totally going to learn this one together because I have no idea what security settings our routers even contain. So we're going to figure this out. And our master guardian with his next question is really giving us some screws. Like, what is WPS? And when is it okay to use? Again, listeners, I'm right there with you. I have no idea what WPS stands for. I don't know when it's okay to use, but we're going to figure this out together. Not a big deal. I did like this question because it made me think of real world stuff. I could relate to it. What is a brute force password attack?
Yeah.
Dude,
Well,
my guess is someone or something is trying to force their way in.
yeah.
They're shoving it in.
Well, I'm with you. We'll get into the details, but I like it too because, right, we can all relate. Like it's one of those metaphors, right? It's a little
Yeah,
metaphor that once we explain it, we see it, it'll stick in your brain pretty well, and it's a good thing to understand in general. And so,
I like it. Now, this one I think is going to be a good one to talk about because which unexpected setting helps against this attack? So we've already got a setting that I say I'm taking credit for. Really, we've got again. Yep, it's official. We've got a secret, or at least a setting that's going to help you against a brute force password attack, which
yeah. Well,
I
and
think is awesome.
yeah, well, and here's the interesting thing that you'll be curious to know, Nick, is I was researching for this episode, making sure always do that before an episode. And one thing that I learned actually in process of researching was about how this setting helps in brute force. And the reason I put unexpected is because not only will it be unexpected to you, but it was unexpected to me. And
Nice.
so yeah, it's I learned something new and interesting. So I thought it was one that wasn't too geeky and worth sharing. So.
We love it when it's not too geeky and it's worth sharing, and especially when we get unexpected protection, layering up our security.
Yep.
Okay, well, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. As you know, I'm Nick, and this is Super Simple Security Principles. Listen each week and learn how to think, not what to think. This is episode 55. The 7 critical router security settings. That's kind of a tongue twister. 7 critical router security settings. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. You're
That
welcome.
said, like last week's episode was pretty simple. We kept that really simple. Like, how do you log into your router? Find your username and password.
Yep.
We
And
can
you're
do
going to
that.
need that this week, right?
Right? I'd
'Cause-
assumed
yeah.
if we're going to do some settings and changing some settings, I'm assuming we're going to need some access to our router.
Yep. Yep.
Or
So obviously
login.
go. Yeah, exactly. You need to be able to log into your router. So go back to listen to episode 54 from last week if you haven't. Um, yeah. So that's all the introduction I have. So the first setting is, and we talked about
We're
this.
jumping right in. Let's go.
Oh yeah, I know. Sometimes I have a lot of introduction, but this time I was just like, nah, we just need to reference last time. And I suspect this in general is going to probably be a fairly short episode, honestly, just
Okay.
as heads up for everybody. So, and we talked about this one last week, but I wanted to repeat it in case you haven't already done it. And that is make sure you have a strong, unique password for your router admin password.
Okay. I think we did cover that. Didn't you say
We,
something along the lines of like 14 characters and
exactly, 100%
Password
good.
manager, maybe setting it up. That's what I would do, is use that password manager to set that up.
Yep. Well, and actually, and I didn't put this in my notes, but then I remembered, you can also actually do a random username in there, and that helps. It's not as much, it's not nearly as important as the password, but having
Right.
a random username does up the challenge level a little bit.
Okay.
Um, so, and it doesn't hurt, other than you got to make sure you don't forget it either. So,
There you go. There you go. Okay.
okay.
One more level. We just layered up again, man.
Yep. And then setting two is, and we had a lot about this in episode 52. We talked about why allowing a remote administration of your router, why letting, somebody on the internet log into your router, in other words,
Not a
that's,
good thing.
yeah, exactly. Bad idea, generally speaking.
Yeah.
And so that's why my recommendation for most people is to have it turned off.
Okay.
But here's what you need to know also is that there are a lot of modern routers actually where you don't have a choice. Um, there's well and yeah. So there are a lot of people who want to be able to do that. It's very convenient, and they have made some more secure. Like they've done it because it's in demand. They've put some more thought into it generally. Again,
Okay.
like we talked about the up levels, part of that goes in hand with remote administration. Um, it all boils down to the specific router. And I can know if you have a question about that, like if you're wanting remote administration for whatever reason, and you're wondering how secure it is or whatever, again, feel free to come to the forum. We can talk about your specific router. But
Do you
so
mind if I ask a question to interrupt?
yeah, no, please do.
So I'm sitting here thinking, why would we want to give remote access to our to someone? Why
Yeah,
why
well,
why would we do that?
the most common case is, at least that I'm familiar with, is like you have, old grandparents, you go set up a router for them, and then, you live far away and you want to be able to help them if something goes wrong on their network. And so you want to be able to control it remotely.
So if some of us are technically challenged and we need help setting up our network, this is when we might give remote access.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, and that's not even necessarily a guarantee because, I mean, most of the time the kind of help you need is with an individual computer, not necessarily with your router, right? And those are two totally separate things. Giving access so somebody can look at your computer is a very different prospect than giving somebody access to access your or to, log into your router, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are two distinct things and two different kinds of help that are needed.
Right.
And the router help is less common because, like we talked about in the last episode, a lot of times once you get the router set up, you don't have to touch it again for a long time.
Right. And
But
that's why we're going down this rabbit hole is, hey, if we could set up some security settings now,
yeah,
you're going to be good for a while.
exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, most modern routers fall into one of two categories. Either remote administration is off by default,
Okay.
in which case all you have to do is not turn it on.
Right.
Right? Don't do anything. The default is good for you in this case. Or remote administration is on by default and there's no way to turn it off.
Mm,
Right? In which
right.
case, the best you can do is make sure you use a random username, like we talked about, and most importantly, a strong, unique password.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now, if you have a mesh router, which are becoming increasingly popular because they provide such awesome Wi-Fi coverage, it's most likely in this second category.
Okay.
One notable exception, and there may be others, but this is one Kem has, is a brand called Unify, and he has a mesh router from them, and you can turn off the remote administration there. So that's a little shout out to Unify.
Well
That
done.
that yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, okay, ready for setting 3?
Yep. Let's get to setting 3.
Automatic firmware updates.
Now, we've talked about this in the past about making sure we're doing our updates.
That's
And I'm
exactly right.
assuming this is why, is because every update is probably going to be security related.
Yeah, not 100% for sure, but
Oh, okay.
sometimes they add little features and stuff too. With routers, more they don't update the features, a ton, but um, yeah. So yeah, I mean you're exactly right though. Keeping your software updated on all your devices is a fundamental security practice. The security updates specifically, with a lot of ones, with routers included, generally you can't just install security updates like you can with your phones or your laptops. So you'll just have to update it. Um, but the reason why it's important is the same as everywhere, because one of the most common ways that hackers break in is to bugs that get found that then they're able to exploit and haven't been updated because you still have an old version of the software.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, it is just, you cannot be overstated how common that is the source of the vulnerability.
They're
So,
finding the loophole and they're exploiting it.
yep. And, inertia's on their side, right?
Yep.
Because a lot of times, and sadly, with routers, they don't all support automatic updates. I have to give that caveat. Like, some do, some don't.
Okay.
Mine, for example, even though it's an awesome router, I love it to death and would never change it, it does not have automatic updates.
Mm.
So I just have to go check manually occasionally or like be on their mailing list for, when there are ones that come out. Those are your basic options. In fact, actually, I have that on my notes, but that's probably, at least that's what I would do is get on the list. Like if your router doesn't support automatic updates, check if they do have a way to like get on their newsletter or whatever. Because if they have a newsletter, they're going to email out about if there's an important vulnerability.
Update.
Um, yeah, or if you
Okay.
like you register with them or something. Anyway, where you could get proactive news from them about updates.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, that makes sense.
Makes sense. Yep.
Okay, now this is the fun one. Well, actually, no, there's two really fun ones, but this is the first of them. I know, fun's relative, but I like them. So there's the Wi-Fi password is the setting that we're talking about, and it's related to the brute force attacks.
Okay.
So my recommendation is to have probably 16 characters on your Wi-Fi password. And
Okay.
here's the reason why. Wi-Fi passwords suffer from a fairly unique weakness these days, where I won't get into all the technical details, but they can be attacked using a brute force attack in a way like your online websites and stuff. They have a lot of ways to protect against brute force attacks, but your Wi-Fi password specifically doesn't have the same kind of protections that apply in a lot of other areas. And so, because of that vulnerability specifically to the brute force attack, which again we'll talk about in just a second, it's extra important if you don't want anybody hacking to get onto your Wi-Fi network that you have a long password, even though it sounds crazy that you need that long, and most people don't.
Right.
Does that make
Right.
sense?
It makes sense because, I mean, just me personally, like, we travel a lot for sports and things like that. And every time I'm in a new rental or logging into their Wi-Fi, I'm like, this is the dumbest password. Like, I'm never going to forget this password. You know,
Yeah,
it's like 5 characters.
yeah,
So,
yep. So a brute force password attack is very simple. It just means you try to guess the password repeatedly. You put in a password, put in a password, put in a password, put in a password, right?
okay.
And what happens if your kid does that when they're trying to get into your phone, Nick?
Eventually you lock it.
Yeah, exactly. It locks you out. The device itself
Yep.
will just lock you out. And that kind of protection is built into most places. But unfortunately, due to the nature of the Wi-Fi technology, there is basically a way for hackers to avoid a lockout when trying to guess your Wi-Fi password.
That sucks.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know, that might change one day. They might figure out a way. I don't know. Like, I don't know all the teeny tiny details about that. I just know that in studying this, that was one thing that came out, was that they're subject to these kind of just very simple, unsophisticated brute force attack, but you can just try it over and over without being penalized, without getting locked out.
Gotcha.
So, and yeah. Okay, so setting 5. Only one hand. 5.
Yes.
The Wi-Fi name. Okay. Now, this one might sound kind of silly, right? Like, I'm telling you, you should change the name of your Wi-Fi network. Uh, from the default, that is. Maybe what you have now is fine, right?
Yeah.
Um, but from the default, and you don't want to use, I suggest anyway, you don't use like anything like the router brand in the name,
Okay.
because that gives a little bit of information. I suggest you don't put any personal information, like your last name is a common one I see in the name. How much risk that? Anyway, that's my advice. That's my advice. But the most important part in choosing the Wi-Fi name um, is actually just having a somewhat unique. Well, I mean, yeah, you want a unique one, as unique as you can, and definitely at least not the default that it came with.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because, like we talked about in our opening question, this is the setting that provides additional protection against the brute force attack. Okay.
Gotcha.
Now, I can't really explain to you why very easily. It's like super geeky, super technical, but I'll say it this way. Um, when we talk about encryption, we talk about we're locking uh, your Wi-Fi password up, right? We don't make it so you can just kind of walk up to the wall and read it plain out,
Right.
right?
Right.
Well, the name of your Wi-Fi is involved. It's one of the inputs. It's one of the pieces of data that is used in securing your Wi-Fi password and locking it up.
Okay. That makes
And
sense.
so if you just use the default, then the hackers, it makes their job a little bit easier in guessing that password.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
That makes
For
sense.
anybody technical listening, the word is it's used as the salt in the algorithm.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's that's really super technical. I just anyway. So enough said there.
Okay.
Um, but that was the one I learned that I didn't realize that it was used in that way. And so it's not because it might give away information, although I think that's worth doing. Again, like I said, with don't putting the router brand or personal information, but it's more about that geeky underlying reason that's really the most critical part of why that's not necessarily obvious or intuitive, right? Like I wouldn't have necessarily said, "Oh yeah, you should definitely change your Wi-Fi name because it's going to protect you better." It's
Right.
not obvious why. So anyway, okay. Now we're to setting 6, which is going to answer another one of our opening questions, which is WPS,
Yep.
and it stands for Wi-Fi Protected Setup.
Okay.
Okay. Now the way I was thinking of to explain this, what WPS is, it's sort of like when you do a Bluetooth pairing, like between headphones and your phone or whatever, that type of thing, right?
Your
Most
car.
people have used Bluetooth. Yeah, exactly. Most people have used Bluetooth, so they know there's kind of this pairing setup phase where that you get two devices that are Bluetooth to be able to talk to each other, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And so what WPS is, it's the same thing except for having a new device get connected to your Wi-Fi network at home. And like a common one is going to be like a printer. Like say you got a new printer and you want to connect it, well, usually like typing in a password on the little screen for your printer, it's kind of a pain. Like it could be done, and they definitely have the interface to do it, but it's a bit of a hassle, right?
Yep.
And so WPS is kind of like a little button uh, way that you can. It's a simpler. You don't have to actually type in the password. You just basically say, "I want to connect this device," and okay, and then you you're set up without having to type the password in.
So we're basically turning a setting on that allows us to pair our devices properly.
No, no,
No? Ooh.
no. So this is actually about disabling this setting,
Oh. Okay, that makes
right?
more sense.
Yeah. So if it's on, and and the other part of the question was when is it okay, right? Um, and so when I say it's at least my perspective is when you're first setting up the router,
Mm-hmm.
and if you want to like connect all your devices to it and you want to make it, and you use WPS and you want to do that to make it easy, that's fine. But once you do that initial setup and you're not going to think about or touch your router again, then I recommend turning it
Disable.
off
Yeah. Okay.
because
That makes
because
sense.
it's not like a huge gaping hole, but it can be exploited. It's a little bit of a vulnerability that, in my opinion, is not. It's always a trade-off of convenience versus security, or often at least. And my opinion is that it's not a good trade-off.
Awesome.
So, and I
Okay.
shouldn't even say just mine. It's pretty common. Like you go look at basic router settings to change if you're trying to have maximum security. You'll see disabling WPS all over the place. So.
Okay.
And the same is true. So for this last setting, and we talked about this, I think, just a bit before. Universal plug and play. Remember that phrase? I think we talked about it
It
in.
sounds familiar, but let's rehash it a little bit.
Yeah, so it's another one that is a convenience feature for setting up certain devices. Um,
Okay.
I personally never used it, but searching online, it looks like making your Xbox, for example, setup easier is a very common use case
Okay.
for certain types of games and stuff like and it lists there's also sometimes printers even I think it looked like to me. Again, I've never actually used it, but it's what it does is it can let individual devices um, ask the router to open up ports.
Hmm.
If you remember what that is, right, we're basically saying, okay, accept some phone calls,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because
Yep. We're
because
letting
I
those
need it.
incoming calls come in.
Yeah, and so that's how it can end up. You're basically letting devices, in some cases, ask the router to open up ports, and without
Hmm.
like you necessarily knowing about that. And I don't. I never want to give the device like if I want some specific thing open, I want to make sure I do that myself very specifically.
Manually open that versus have it do it on its own.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Yeah, because it opens up again, and this is pretty common security advice out there. There's not a lot of disagreement about that. If you're trying to lock down your router, you want to turn that off because
Okay.
it opens up some additional points of attack for hackers. So
Okay.
okay, that was seven. Yeah, seven.
Let's review them real quick. How quick can you spout those seven off? I'll hold up the fingers.
Yeah. So the router admin password, disabling remote administration, automatic firmware updates, strong unique Wi-Fi password, unique Wi-Fi name, disable WPS, and disable universal plug and play. Obviously, a lot of times abbreviated as the UPnP.
Okay.
So, yeah. Well, and here's one thing about that list too. Another plug for our weekly emails that we send out along
Yeah.
with the podcast is, you don't have to take notes. Like you don't have to remember that list that I just said. If you just sign up for the emails, I'll send you out, and I do uh, all the most important things, including the call to action, summary. Try to pack as much of these 20-25 minutes into like a 1 minute worth of reading. That's my goal, is to have that email
Excellent.
1 minute, and it'll definitely have those 7 in there. So just another plug for that email.
Yeah, if you're not getting our emails, log in. Sign up for those. We would love to be able to send you out our emails. They're super easy. Like these are emails I enjoy, that I read, that I can handle.
Nice. That's about as high praise as you get. Nice.
Awesome. Okay, so sign up for our emails. What's going to be our call to action, though? We've reached that time in our show. We're already there.
Yeah, well, so your recap kind of did it for us, because really it's just go adjust those settings in the way we talked about. Most of them are just turning something off, but obviously there's a couple that are also take a little more work, because you got to pick a strong, unique password for them,
Yeah.
or the Wi-Fi name. But yeah, that's it. I think I looked at the questions too. I think we covered those, and so yep, I think we're good for today's episode.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, let's segue into next episode a little bit. We've talked about the external attacks on your home network. So the ones that are coming from the internet, those incoming calls, right? Those
Yep.
incoming calls. In our next episode, we're going to focus on the internal attacks, which are from the devices inside your home. Let's go, right? Like I think most of us can comprehend the importance of safeguarding our devices in our own home. Like this is something I think we could easily wrap our minds around, especially given that we just did all the router stuff. Like we just talked about a router, and people are like, or at least I was like, WPS, routers, access. I gotta log into my router. Like this is going to be something that I think resonates well with everybody. Look, we're going to focus on the internal attacks from the devices inside your home network. So there we go. We have a ton of devices. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah. Well, and it may be, you might be asking, and we'll talk about this, but why are devices on my own home network attacking, right?
Right.
That's one of the big kind of questions. So,
Excellent.
because
There you
normally you'd
go.
expect all the devices to be friendly on your home network, right? But
Right.
there's reasons why that ends up not being the case sometimes. So,
Well, we just learned about it briefly with, our Xbox being able to port out.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, that's not intentionally malicious, just maybe reckless. But yeah,
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you have it. That was an awesome show, dude.
yeah. Thank you. You too, man. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it
Appreciate all
was.
your questions and interjections a lot. I think helps a lot for listeners to make sure keeping me simple. So
Yes. Get on our email list. It's super simple.
yeah, amen.
Are you ready to take action and wondering where to start? Get my Bulletproof My Identity Starter Kit for free. The 7 most vital layers of protection everyone needs. I'll send you one step at a time and help you if you get stuck. Just go to bulletproofmyid.com and enter your name and email, and I will send you the first step. Again, that's bulletproofmyid.com.